Differences over a 2 percentage point increase in VAT or value-added tax has seen the first national budget speech under the Government of National Unity being postponed yesterday. Widely described as unprecedented, the move saw the rand weakening by 1% against the US dollar shortly thereafter. Minister Enoch Godongwana confirmed that the budget was postponed and that the government would have further discussions and table a new budget on the 12th of March. Analysts have been weighing in on yesterday's development, and today we bring in Economist and CEO of Pan-African Investments, Dr Iraj Abedian. Dr Abedian, always a great pleasure speaking to you. Before perhaps we get started on yesterday's deliberations, can I just get your quick view on what's happening with the foreign ministers meeting, the G20 that's currently happening, and the fact that the US is not playing ball and it's not interested?
Yeah, it is a very, thank you very much for inviting, and greetings to our viewers. It's a very momentous occasion for G20 meeting being presided by an African president, especially our president, President Ramaphosa. So it's a fantastic point of celebration, and at the same time it's tragic that the relationship between the United States and South Africa has been muddied to the point that nobody from the cabinet level of the United States is participating. This is a big, big disappointment. Potentially a big part of the blame for this lies with our lack of urgency in dealing with this matter. It's just unfortunate, but it's a good occasion for us to celebrate, despite its sad and potentially problematic absence of the United States.
Yeah. Let's go back to yesterday's unfolding events. Quite dramatic, if you ask me, of what happened. But a lot of your colleagues in the analyst space have been talking about how this is a good indication of the GNU working. It has happened. The reasons have been given out. But what happens now? Where do we go now? What's the process of tabling a new budget? And to what extent does it impact the allocation of resources to provinces, for instance?
Yeah, I think that's a very important also evolution point for our governments to change the culture of governance. Remember, budgetary allocation is not a simple matter. It's a massively consequential daily life impact for all South Africans, for businesses, for the employment, etc., etc. So yesterday was really a massive fault line in the GNU and in government, particularly the ANC component of GNU, not appreciating or being willing to change the culture of governance. Yeah. And I'm not referring to the political side of it. Of course, there's a political dimension. You are in a coalition government. The partners expect to be respected and treated and brought into the decision-making, not to be brought into rubber stamp. So that is for politicians to sort out. But I'm sitting as an economist and somebody intensely involved in the fiscal policy matters. I find it very problematic that the government does not want to or has not learned to change the culture of resource allocation and fiscal management. Up to now, the broad strokes of policy has been when the economy is good, the tax revenue is good, you borrow less. You don't have to control expenditure. You don't have to plan for long-term expenditure management. When times are bad, borrow to make up because it's a short-term thing, because of COVID, because of whatever reasons. That has been the culture, and that culture is not sustainable because every time that you borrow and the economy does not grow, you do not deal with structural problems, you end up ultimately where we have ended up, which is currently government has run out of headroom for borrowing. Public debt is too high, it's too expensive. It costs more than 20% of every rand that government has to go and service public debt. That is not sustainable. Or they have occasionally managed expenditure. They cut sort of allocation to various police, education, this, that, and the other. That also is not sustainable. So I think it's about a culture of fiscal management and macroeconomic policy, and that has come to the fore. For me, the postponement of the budget is just a symptom. The real cause is that we need to make a step change in our macroeconomic management policy.
Let's talk about the impact that this 17% would have had on consumers and just generally on the economy had it been allowed to happen. What is the worst that could have happened?
Well, it's a terrible thing because the bulk of it would have gone to the middle class and the poor who are already under pressure. Those who are unemployed or are on the pension, they are on social grant. And remember, every month, over 20 million of our population is on social grant. That social grant is fixed, whether it's 350 million and 50 rand, or whether it's 1,000 rand or whatever it is. When you increase VAT, they are the recipient of it. They are the ones who get hardest hit, and the level of impoverishment will rise. So that is not a sustainable policy. Last time at that time, Minister Gigaba did it, it was also a foolish policy, which we have seen the impact of. It was supposed to be temporary, but 10 years later, the notion has been forgotten. So I think taxes need to be very, very wisely applied, especially in our society where the majority poor, the majority lower income, they are dependent on fixed public monthly payment. It would have been consequential.
Dr. Abedian, always a great pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Abedian is an economist and CEO of the Pan-African Investments.